So it's 2024, almost 2025, and for some reason there are still a select few knobhead. Sorry, what I meant to say was there are still a select few people who believe that carbs are the reason for obesity and carbs are the reason why people get fat. There are people giving shit to carbohydrates all over the world, saying that if you eat bread, you're gonna, I don't know, combust into a million pieces or some shit like that. So let me just answer this video with one very, very short answer to that claim. That is bollocks. Now, let me try and answer that claim with a little bit of a longer answer. So carbohydrates are one of the 3 or 4, depending on if you're counting fiber or not, main macronutrients that we consume. They're our body's preferred way of generating energy, and they prioritize carbohydrates as a substrate for that energy. The secondary thing that our bodies like to use is dietary fats. And then the third thing that they like to use, if obviously we've not got much carbohydrates or fats in our system, is protein. Our bodies don't really want to use protein for energy because it's better for building muscle, repairing muscle, and all that good stuff. But carbohydrates are our body's most preferred way of generating energy. But people assume that carbohydrates are really, really, really bad for you and are the main reason as to why people put on fat. But they're not, right? And the reason why people believe that they are, well, there's 2 reasons really. In fact, there's actually 3 reasons, but I'm going to go over the first 2 and then I'm going to end with the third. So the first reason as to why people think that carbohydrates cause fat gain is because they retain water. Per gram of carbohydrate that you consume, when it gets stored as glycogen, so basically the short fire energy that we store in our muscles and liver, they retain between 3 to 4 grams of water, which means that if you completely cut out carbohydrates from your diet, you would lose a shit ton of weight very, very fast. But that isn't because you've lost a shit ton of body fat. That's literally just because you've lost a shit ton of water, which your carbohydrates retain. You get the same outcome by literally just going for a piss. Like, you'd lose a shit ton of weight, but you've not lost any fat, provided you're not creating a calorie deficit. Remember, people who want to lose weight don't actually want to lose weight, they want to lose fat. If you wanted to lose weight, you could literally just go to the toilet or cut off an arm or, contract a stomach illness or something. So that's the first main reason as to why people assume that carbohydrates are the cause of fat gain. Also, let's be honest as well, if you cut out carbohydrates completely from your diet, then you're going to be basically cutting out a whole food group. And the carbohydrate food group has so many foods in there. You've got pastas, you've got grains, you've got breads, you've got fruits, you've got vegetables, you've got chocolate, you've got everything in there. There's more carbohydrates, to be honest, than most other foods in the world. So you're basically eliminating a whole food group, which basically means that you're going to be way, way more likely of a chance if you reducing your calorie intake from eliminating this food group. But that's beside the point. The second reason as to why people think that carbohydrates cause fat gain is because when people think of carbohydrates, they think of bagels, they think of chocolate, they think of cake, they think of all of these high caloric foods, which, if we did cut out from our diets, would help us reduce our calorie intake and therefore help us lose fat. Now, keep in mind that I don't believe you should be restricting any kinds of food from your diet at all. I think that any kind of food can be implemented into a balanced diet and you can consistently lose fat whilst eating these things. But these foods in question, so your bagels, your cakes, your chocolates, etc., etc., sure, they might have carbohydrates in them, but funnily enough, there's quite a lot of fat in them as well. And even though fat isn't bad for you, it is really, really calorie dense. So per gram of fat, there's about 9 calories. Just for reference, per gram of carbohydrate, there's about 3.75 calories. If you've got a chocolate bar, then I guarantee the majority of that chocolate bar is made up of fat, not carbohydrates. Which means that if you're cutting out that chocolate, you're not just cutting out carbohydrates, but you're also cutting out the fats, and therefore the amount of calories that you're eating within that food. So these kinds of foods were ultra processed, and as we know, ultra processed foods tend to be very, very palatable, which means they taste amazing, and they also tend to be relatively high in calories because of the amount of fats and carbohydrates stored within them, with a severe lack of protein. And finally, and I'm just going to touch upon this one, there was a theory known as the insulin model of obesity. And the insulin model of obesity basically assumed that when you intake carbohydrates, your blood glucose level increases, which it does, but then again, it also increases no matter what you eat. It also increases with protein intake. So people assume that an increased amount of carbohydrates makes your body's insulin response inhibited. But that doesn't mean anything to do with fat loss, because fat loss is caused by eating less calories than what you burn off. Insulin is the driver behind the mechanisms behind fat loss, but it isn't the thing that causes it, nor is it the thing that causes fat gain. The way that I like to characterize insulin is it's kind of like the gates at a train station that let people in and out and go to where they need to be. The trains are the blood vessels and the transportation systems that everything in your body needs to take in order to get to where it needs to be. Now, even though the gates are the things that allow people to pass in and out of them, it doesn't really matter because the people are still going to get to where they want to be. Sure, they might take a little bit more time and more effort to get to where they want to be through these gates if there's only one open, but there's 1,000 different people there. But it doesn't stop these people from getting to where they want to be, because eventually they will. And that's exactly like fat loss and fat gain. Just because insulin is either inhibited or the sensitivity to insulin is just increased doesn't mean that fat loss or fat gain get affected in any way at all. If you're eating more calories than what you burn off, you are going to put on fat. If you are eating less calories than what you burn off, you're going to lose fat, no matter what happens, no matter how much insulin you got in your body, no matter what your insulin resistance or sensitivity is like. This insulin model of obesity has been debunked several times, and there's been also studies where people have literally just been on a high carb, only carb specific diet, but created a calorie deficit, and Bob's your uncle, who'd have thought it, they lost fat, which disproves the insulin model of obesity countless times over, amongst other studies as well. This is why people believe that carbohydrates are bad for you. This is why people believe that carbohydrates are the cause of obesity, and this is also complete fucking bollocks, and I really wish that in 2025 this claim dies. I hope this helps. I hope this makes sense. If you like this video, give it a like. If you've got any questions for me, comment below, because I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. And if you want to catch any more free fitness or fat loss based content without any of the bullshit, as always, make sure that you're either following my Instagram at k.p_health or subscribe to this channel. Peace.